Okay, thank you, Kathleen. And I would like to thank Kathleen and the Winthrop Rockefeller Institute staff for putting together this forum, and Dean Rutherford and the Clinton School and the Clinton Center for hosting. And Matt, you gave a great presentation, and we're very fortunate to have such a great panel here. And the way I thought I'd start to get it going was I'd like each of our panelists to talk about the organizations that they run, because some of them are for-profit, some of them are not-for-profit. But when you talk about your organizations, I'd also like you to sort of address this term social entrepreneurship, because, you know, obviously at first glance, it sounds like a special term because it suggests sort of an inherent contradiction, but yet a lot of people who do entrepreneurial work probably think of what they do as having a social good if they're creating jobs or creating a company. And if somebody's creating an organization as a social benefit, I think they also think of themselves as being entrepreneurial. So I just wonder, you know, as you talk about your organization, could you address, you know, what it is that makes your organization special and particularly socially entrepreneurial? And I guess we can start with you.
So we own a pizza restaurant. My husband Austin is here today as well, and we get to do this together, which is really one of the best parts. But we are set up as a for-profit business. And basically, for every meal that we sell in the restaurant, we donate a portion of the proceeds to a nonprofit. So it's a partnership, and they feed a child. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But one thing that's been so unique for Austin and I with social entrepreneurship, we believe that that's just creating solutions to social problems. So Austin and I developed a passion for hunger back in 2008. We just started researching hunger. We actually graduated from Ouachita Baptist in 2008. We moved out to the West Coast, actually, and lived in Los Angeles. And while we were there, we just started learning a lot about local hunger right there in Los Angeles. And then through that, we started learning about international hunger. We just got the opportunity to meet a lot of people out there that had been involved in international hunger. And through that, we heard the statistic that 18,000 children die each day because of hunger and hunger-related causes. And for Austin and I, at that point, that really changed things for us. And so we started asking the question, what can we do to meet that need? And I think for us, that's when social entrepreneurship became a reality. So we thought, what is our role in helping to alleviate that pain? And so we chose a for-profit business with Pizza for Two. So basically what we do is not complicated. And a lot of people ask us, well, how do you do what you do? What's the formula? How does it look? All of those things. And basically it's really simple. For every person that comes in and orders a pizza, a salad, or a wrap at our restaurant, we donate 22 cents to a nonprofit, like I mentioned, called Feed My Starving Children. And they feed a child. So we've developed a really unique relationship with them. Like Matt mentioned, that's very personal. So we get a chance to hear from them about the impact that they're having on the ground. They are very transparent with us about how it's literally changing people's lives. And then we're able to, as a for-profit business, share that with our customers. And by saying, because you came in and purchased a product that hopefully you enjoyed, you're not only able to be full, but you're also able to be full of knowing that you created positive change. And that could have been somewhere in Ethiopia, it could have been in Swaziland, Africa, it could have been in Central America, right next to our door. But yeah, it's been a very rewarding and challenging job, but we enjoy it. So.
Thank you. David?
Well, Hendrix College, I'm sure most of you know it, is very strong academically, about 1,450 students. I've been on the board, I think going on about 11 years. And it's a very innovative place, and it has a very innovative board of trustees. And one of the things that happened years ago was that a donor gave us 125 acres of land immediately adjacent to our main campus. And so as a board, it was just sitting there, and we weren't really doing very much with it. And we started thinking about different options. And if you had wanted to make a, quote, profit out of it, probably the most sensible thing to do would have been to sell it to a developer or go into partnership with a developer and put in a nice shiny office park or some commercial space, something like that. Instead, we decided to build a town. And, well, why would we do that? Well, it was partly because of the commitment to the college of the whole concept of new urbanism, walkable neighborhoods, green, energy-efficient buildings, and something that we could build as a model that would enhance the Conway community and also illustrate to our students what our college is about. And so we set out as a board and funded it. And we're now at a stage to where we've built 40 homes. We have faculty, coaches, members of the community living there. We tried to tie it tightly to the college, so we developed 3 mixed-use buildings on the village square that we were talking about, the green with the Shakespeare Festival. And we now have 120 students living in the first 2 buildings, 80 more coming into the 3rd buildings, and then on the ground floor, we rent that space out as commercial space. So for our students, we have provided a Panera Bread, Zaza's Pizza, a bookstore. We have Purple Cow coming, and a bank. And I'm not sure if there's anything that students like more than a purple milkshake other than cash. So we've really tried to develop services that are valuable to our students and be a model for the community and do something different out there. We also tie it into classrooms. We had a watershed reclamation project that we worked with, turned it over to the biology department, had students designing that, planted 400 trees. And if you get a chance, either go to the Hendricks website and check it out, or just go up there and drive through. One of the advantages is that it has really given Hendricks a boost in terms of national recognition. Students are interested in it. It has helped us boost our enrollment. It's just a very attractive amenity for the college, and it's something that most colleges typically wouldn't get involved in. The other project is very quickly that I've worked on with Hendricks is called the Rwanda Presidential Scholars Program. And that was a program that we started in 2007. I had gone to Rwanda with some friends, and I see some of their spouses here, and initially went over there as a fundraising trip for an orphanage up in northern Rwanda, but one of my friends introduced us to a fledgling program that was being sponsored by the government of Rwanda to line up scholarships for their top students. And so Hendricks signed up very early as a second school involved in that program. And it's a very specialized, targeted program, because those of you that are familiar with the horrific genocide in 1994, the targets of that genocide, by and large, were the professional class. Your educators, doctors, lawyers, senior government officials, businessmen, and it literally destroyed the infrastructure of the country. And as you can imagine, that just takes a tremendous amount of time to rebuild. And so what this program does is it takes the top college students, the top high school students. We were getting the top 100 students in the entire country in chemistry and biology, and the top 100 students in the entire country in physics and math. These are like your national merit finalists on steroids, and bringing them to the United States and giving them college educations, and then hopefully sending them on to graduate school in exchange for commitments to go back and work in Rwanda for 5 years. And to give you an idea of how smart these kids are, the first 4 kids we brought in had little education in the way of English. It was their 3rd language. And so the professors decided to load them up with physics and math and chemistry courses, which didn't sound like much of a favor to me. One of them, his first semester, had a 4-point and set the curve in his freshman physics class. So we've now expanded that program. We have 18 schools involved and 150 students, and we're running it every year.
Terrific. Thank you. Todd?
Our company, Westrock Coffee, started in Rwanda as well. I lived there for a couple years with my family and started a microfinance bank, so had some sense of the challenges that were on the ground. And in 2009, when West Rock Coffee started, what we saw was basically a math problem. It was a very inefficient coffee market. The farmers were not getting paid what their coffee was worth, and it's not necessarily because anyone was trying to cheat them. It was because it was very risky to get that coffee out of the country because it has to travel through Uganda to Kenya or over through Tanzania to get exported to the ocean and either to Europe, Asia, or the U.S. And coffee is a very complicated supply chain, and coffee would go bad, coffee wouldn't show up on time, and so due to all those risks, the exporters that were in Rwanda in 2009, they had to mitigate their risk by paying a lower price. And there were really two main exporters, and we had a little bit of experience in market dynamics, knew there needed to be a third competitor on board to help create efficiencies in the marketplace. And that's where we started. We now have a roasting plant here in Little Rock, and we roast a lot of the coffee that we export from Rwanda. We've expanded into Tanzania, and we have a new operation being built in Tanzania. I just got pictures yesterday of concrete being poured and sorting machines being put together in southern Tanzania, which is a part of Tanzania that is underdeveloped relative to the northern part of the country near Kilimanjaro for the coffee industry. Social entrepreneurship, yeah, when I moved to Rwanda to start a microfinance bank, that word was not familiar to me, and really didn't see ourselves as doing anything highly unique in that way. But when I think about it in the context of our coffee business, we're obviously going over there, and we're a for-profit business. We're trying to buy coffee and sell coffee at a profit to our customers. A lot of our customers are other roasting companies, Starbucks, Green Mountain, Folgers. And what makes us unique in that way is that we're trying to assist the entire coffee supply chain. We're not just going over and cherry picking the finest coffees, which may represent 5% of the harvest. We're trying to go to a cooperative of farmers and buy their entire harvest and finding customers for each of those different quality levels. And beyond just buying their coffee, we're helping them develop clean water facilities. We're helping them with health care, doing a lot of agronomy training. I'm actually headed over there this Saturday to spend a week over there and review some of the water treatment facilities we've put in over the summer. So that's where the business and social impact kind of meet for us is on the ground with the farmers.
Well, Warwick, I don't really have an organization in the sense of the way you asked the question, other than perhaps the dozen or so young entrepreneurs I met on a Thursday afternoon some 2.5 years ago in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Not Kenya, but parts of town are close. I was at the time thinking about running for office, and I had heard enough other people who were running for office use terms like we're going to grow jobs, we're going to grow the economy. And as you can guess, well, that's about as far as they ever get. So I was on this quest to find out, well, how are we going to do that? You know, how can we do that in the 21st century? Because it had become clear that the old ways weren't working for everybody. They weren't, you know, and around by 2007, 2008, it became fairly clear that they weren't working for a lot of people. So I went to this group and began visiting with them, and one of the things that popped up during their discussions was there were several of them that had encountered the concept of the benefit corporation. And they said, if you get elected, you really need to see if you can get this in Arkansas. You know, at that time there was like 12 states had enacted benefit corporation legislation. And they said that would really help a lot of us who are coming along who really, you know, we've learned about it, and we've really become believers that we can harness the incredible potential of capital to do good and make a profit at the same time. Kathleen touched on what we call the triple bottom line. A traditional corporation has one. you must maximize profits. Over time, our federal courts, up to and including the Supreme Court, came to the conclusion that was the only purpose of for-profit corporations in the United States. So what you had were board member directors and officers of corporations who were trying to incorporate good community practices, look out for the society in general, look out for the environment, pay a little extra for a product that can be locally sourced, et cetera, and they were becoming the targets of shareholder suits because there were a good number of folks, often fund managers and things like that, who really weren't too thrilled about the idea of the warm and fuzzies. They just wanted their dividends, thank you very much. The benefit corporation movement came out of that with an idea that we would then create a new corporate form that added also, in addition to the profit, we would have benefit society and your environment, your human environment and your biotic environment. It has grown so rapidly. As I said before, we were at 12 when I heard about it. We were able to get it passed here, and we became lucky number 13. And then by the end of spring and summer, we are now up to 20. And probably the most significant one was just this spring and summer when Delaware came on board. I'm not going to take away from the Arkansas one because I certainly would like all of our Arkansas entrepreneurs to incorporate here. But as far as a global movement, if any of you have any experience or knowledge of corporate structure, corporate taxation structures, et cetera, you'll understand that many, if not all, of the larger multinational corporations choose to, for tax reasons and the fact that Delaware has made a point of making themselves friendly, choose to incorporate in Delaware. I mean, pull out a credit card and see where the bank who's underwriting your credit card chose to incorporate. I'm betting it's Delaware. The fact is, with them coming online, the global movement toward the triple bottom line gained incredible momentum. I can't go into every single detail from it, but what I'd like you to do, particularly, I know the folks that are drawn to these sort of things are connected. If you can type in bcorporation.net, B Corporation, all one word, you'll get a group a nonprofit called B Lab. They were instrumental in helping me write this thing, and they were there holding my hand every day. I had them on speed dial, and we were taking conference calls in the Walmart parking lot one day. There you'll find incredible ways that you can become involved in the movement. And if you know somebody who's in the business world, who's interested in finding a better model for the corporation, you can let them know.
Okay, thanks, David. And since we've already heard from Matt about Kiva, I was wondering, if you're familiar with the B Corporation concept, and if so, if that's a model that could be applied to an organization like Kiva, if it would work better than a nonprofit model for something like what you're doing.
You mean to take that?
Yeah.
Okay.
For you.
I thought you said since you'd already heard from me, you didn't want to hear from me.
No, I was changing up the question.
Smart move. I think it could. When we were starting Kiva, I didn't really know about that. And we became a nonprofit, which allows no shareholder equity whatsoever. So because we're a nonprofit, we have no shareholders, no profits, and it's sort of like a public utility, and there's no possibility of profit making.
If I could, on follow-up, one of the reasons you probably hadn't heard of it is, and I think this is a generational thing, a wave of like thinkers. I'm sorry.
We did it. Just wake you guys up.
That's one of my biggest problems is gesticulation. But the first group of people got together and theorized about the benefit corporation did it in 2006.
Okay, there you go.
And in 2010, Maryland became the first state to actually pass legislation.
And I guess if it were more widely accepted, especially by bankers, we could have done it. The reason nonprofit was so valuable for us was it helped us get around all these securities laws, and I don't think the SEC would have treated us as kindly if we were a B Corp. They probably just don't know about it.
And just for the benefit of the audience, this B Corp legislation that Representative Whitaker sponsored just passed this past legislative session this year, so it became law this summer. And as far as I know, there's not a single corporation that has yet incorporated as a B Corp in Arkansas, but I may be wrong about that, which is why I was going to ask Todd or Ashton especially. I mean, would that be a model that you would consider for the kind of companies that you're running?
Well, that was going to be my first question when we broke here, was to actually learn more about it, because I had not heard about it. We're privately held, and obviously when you're privately held, you don't have just the one maximize profits as your only goal. So we can, I'm curious to learn more about it when we break here.
Yeah, it's similar for us. I was actually mentioning to Austin after we got invited to share here, it was the first time I'd heard about it. It's very interesting, and I'm just excited for Arkansas to be a part of something like that. So we're both very interested in learning more about it, for sure.
Well, and just, from an abstract perspective, I mean, I'm just wondering kind of, as we're talking about these issues, does the profit motive ultimately corrupt the social mission of any organization, and vice versa? Does having a social mission corrupt the ability of a company to make a profit? Because, I mean, that's clearly the quandary that we've been in over the last few decades, where somebody like Matt has to decide, I'm either a nonprofit or I'm a for-profit corporation, and if you're a nonprofit, you sure as heck better not, try to make a profit, and vice versa. As we've heard, your shareholders are have your neck if you, don't make a profit if you're managing a for-profit corporation. So, I mean, are these concepts, can they coexist in your experience? I mean, is it going to work out for your companies and what Hendricks and Richard Wawanda's trying to do? And Matt, any of you?
I think it's sometimes difficult to tie the emotional or personal ideals with the practical. It comes into a lot of the issues you have with Kiva, with currency, transferring funds. You get into situations where you access to capital in global transactions. That's why so many companies go public, because that's obviously access to capital. And when you go public, obviously then your first priority has to be profits, because, like you said, that's what the courts have decided, and that's why people invest to make money. And we've been, in our case, because we've been privately held, we can hold more than one goal of just being focused on our profits. But in my limited experience and working in Rwanda and working with several private companies that do a lot of good in the world, the one interesting thing I've seen for-profit companies is they maintain that as their first priority. The ones I've seen struggle, both in an East African context and a U.S. context, is when they, as a for-profit business, they get their priorities out of line in the context of they have to make money to actually be able to give money away. And that's the only consistent thing I've seen. I've seen different, the way owners that high net worth individuals that do things differently with their net worth and with their giving. But the one thing that's all common is they don't lose that sight of they have to make profits first.
I completely agree. I know one thing that Austin and I always talk about a lot is I think the most challenging thing about what we do is the business side. Just because the mission for Austin and I came first, and the restaurant was just the vehicle for us to be able to give. So sometimes we say that we are energized by putting on 5Ks that raise meals, or by hosting an event where you pack those meals. And then we remember the most important thing is the mission, but we also have to give so much more weight to the product. Because if you don't have a product that people want to buy, you don't have that built-in sustainability, which is what makes for-profit companies that have causes behind them so interesting, is because you are giving people something that they're already going to do anyway. So by using it as a force for good and continuing to place weight on giving a quality product that is competitive with those people that may not be giving, that's when I feel like it's a win for both sides. Yeah.
Well, I'd say from an investment banking perspective, especially the main advantage I see in it is in the businesses you're hearing described that are private, really like the Village at Hendricks, for example, is a for-profit entity. But it doesn't really matter that we're not trying to generate maximum dollar profits because we've got a single shareholder, which is the college. On the other hand, if you've got a corporation like Todd's and you want to grow and get access to capital, and the way you do that is access the capital markets and do stock offerings, then you've immediately got a problem. And so it can restrict your growth and your potential. Well, with a B corporation, it's clear up front exactly what you're doing, what your mission is, what you're trying to accomplish, and that people don't expect pure profit to go to shareholders. And so you can disclose all that up front and get access to the capital markets and grow that business. And that is a huge advantage for this model.
And the reporting requirements that are written into the law, I guess, okay, as a threshold thing, something we need to clear up. You're going to hear the term B corporation thrown around often as if it were interchangeable. There are two concepts out there. There's the B corporation legal status, which is what the Act provided for in Arkansas. And then there is the certified B corporation. The best analogy I can give you is that the Green Building Council does LEED certification. This is B Lab actually does this, is the third party who does annual and preliminary and then annual evaluations of your B corporation to keep your certification. And one of the big parts of it is increased transparency. When a traditional corporation does an annual report, they report how much we spent, how much we earned, and how much we're returning in profits. Well, a B corporation has to do that, but they also have sections of their annual report that has to say, what did we do for society? What did we do for the environment? And as was mentioned, right up front, because you have incorporated this way and you're going public this way, you're attracting the impact investor, the person that wants you to go out and do good things. The person that doesn't want you wasting your time on charity and just maximize my dividends is probably going to take a pass, and God bless them, they can. But those that want to be impact investors can come to a type of corporation that can marshal the vast potential of capital to do good.
Well, now that we've created a B corporation in Arkansas, I mean, what are the other barriers that exist to promoting more social entrepreneurship in Arkansas, and what are the proactive steps that we can take either at the policy level or at, maybe the private sector level, nonprofit level, to promote more of this in the state? Because I get the feeling that, from everything from a generational perspective and otherwise, that there's an interest in this and people are looking for opportunities to create businesses that have a social impact, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit. But what's preventing that? And maybe we can also address that in the Q&A later, but I'm curious, what can we do to promote that further?
Well, from our experience, what's limited our growth has really been access to working capital, not investment capital. It's to go to a bank and get an asset-backed loan, which is a challenge for a lot of startups. That being in a commodity business, that's not as much of an issue as it is working capital, and that's just true in any commodity-based business. And so we've had a challenge of finding that at a global scale, and I will have to say that we've worked really well with a local bank here in Arkansas, First Security Bank, that has really been very helpful, because what we basically do with the money that they would lend us is we would put it to work in Africa. And that's not a common practice for a local bank in Arkansas to do. But we've been very thankful that they've been willing to go out on a limb and do that. And it's working capital lines of credit are specific to businesses like ours, and may not find too many applications of that here in Arkansas, maybe outside of maybe the ag sector.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think for us, it's similar. Startup capital for an idea. You know, there's so many people out there that come and talk to Austin and I, like, man, I'd love to pick your brain. I'd love to find out about how this worked for you guys. And one of the questions they always ask us is, how in the world did you, once you had that idea, how did you make that happen? Where did your startup money come from and all of that? And it was something Matt and I were talking about before we came up here that I really enjoyed about learning more about Kiva is, even right here in Arkansas, there are entrepreneurs, I'm sure many people in this room, that have ideas that they're like, wow, I really feel like society could benefit from this, but because local banks, it's hard for them. I know for us, 94% of all restaurants fail in the first 2 years. If we heard that once, we heard that 100 times, naturally. And so that was a big challenge, especially starting it up. And so banks naturally don't usually, traditional banks don't fund startups, and very rarely do they fund restaurants. And so our story was, I mean, 6 banks. We thought, man, surely we'll get a small business loan. This will be a great way for us to start up. And every time we would come home and be like, well, we're going to try again. And so that was just, I think that's a great challenge. And that's why I'm excited even seeing things starting to happen right here in our own state of people being able to find resources for that. So.
Matt, I mean, you have probably a great perspective also on the things that we can do, not just in Arkansas, but elsewhere to, you know, create more opportunity for social entrepreneurship, since you kind of had to do it the hard way and work your way up.
Yeah, well, a few things that really helped me when I started was I was immediately within a community of other social entrepreneurs, and then a community around them of mentors and philanthropists that were familiar with the concept. So just making the concept widely known and then creating an ecosystem of support around it, because we got to stick together, because it's doing what we're doing is hard. It's hard to start any business, but to start a social business that's not clearly profitable is very hard. And so we just need to stick together.
Well, and one of the things too I wanted to do while Matt was here is kind of brag on Arkansas for a second, because certainly we've got one of the best social entrepreneurship stories in the country in Heifer International, which you know, pioneered a concept really very similar to Kiva back in the 1930s. And then also you had had Muhammad Yunus up on the screen, and Dean Rutherford, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he here in Arkansas back in the 70s and helped start Southern Bancorp, which was one of the first development banks here in the South, and sort of where he got some of his ideas about microlending in addition to Southeast Asia. So we've got a good history here, and it sounds like one of the things we need to do, as in other industries, is create clusters of people who are kind of working in the same environments, who can help each other, and then create the critical mass necessary to make some of this, I guess, scalable, which is the word you used. I just wonder if any of you have any other sort of comments about, you know, the future of social entrepreneurship in Arkansas, and what are the advantages and disadvantages we have here in the state, and, you know, where you kind of see things going. And any of you can pick it up.
Well, I wanted to follow up on something you just mentioned, because one of the strengths about Arkansas is it is a fairly small state, and you do have relationships with people that are working in other organizations, and you frequently hear it said that individuals can make a difference, and I always amend that to say individuals can make a difference, especially if they bring an organization with them. And if you can get organizations to partner together, it really works well. So for example, with the Rwanda Presidential Scholars Program, Hendricks really wouldn't have been able to do that much with it because it's a small school and we could take a limited number of students. But by partnering with 17 other schools, we could take many more students, and the economic impact on each school stayed relatively low. Then UALR in particular provided us English as a second language training and an organizational kind of an orientation program during the summer. The Clinton Foundation provided us a very generous grant to help with out-of-pocket expenses, travel overseas, all that sort of thing. We partnered with churches who provided us with host families so that the kids could come and stay and not, bunker up together in the dormitories, and they'd go out into the community and live in people's homes. And that really didn't place much of a burden on any particular organization, but when you get them all working together like that, it can really make a huge difference.
Yeah, I know for Austin and I, the one thing that has really blown us away is just the way that the community of Conway and really Central Arkansas in general has made the idea of the Meal for Meal program a possibility and a reality. The restaurant itself has raised 239,000 meals in 2 years, which is awesome, but we feel like the cooler part is that the community has raised 213,000. So that would be your churches, your sororities, your banks, people that have just come alongside and said, hey, I really like what you're doing. How can we be involved? And we say, well, we would love for you to match, what the restaurant is doing over the next 3 months. And they say, well, we would love to do that. So, we have a girl that, it's just this little local girl that goes to school in 3rd grade, and I spoke to their class, and she sold Twinkies outside of her house for a whole weekend. And she raised an unbelievable amount of meals reselling Twinkies. But I think people were just so blown away by the fact that she was inspired as a 3rd grader to do something to change her world, and that she found a tangible way that she could do that right there in Conway. And so I love that point. I think that's such a great thing that we've learned over 2 years is, with a community behind you, you really feel a sense of support and camaraderie. And I know sometimes in our hardest days, just in the restaurant business and in the throes of food ordering and inventory and margins and all of that, there's times that we're like, man, and then someone walks in and is just like, this is awesome, how can I be involved? And just getting people involved in your cause, I think Warwick is one of the things that has really helped us out, is to realize it's not just us doing this, it's a group of people, and whether you are nonprofit or for-profit, that's what's so unique about what hopefully the B Corp can continue to build in the state, is getting people to create kind of a group for common good. So,
to add to what you just said, I think that one of the greatest assets we have in Arkansas is our culture, and what I mean by that is we're a small state. We're 1 or 2 people away from feeling like we know everybody in the state. And I'm probably tainted a bit because I grew up in a very small town in East Arkansas, and that is definitely true. And we now have an infrastructure and a template in the B Corp model. I still think we need work on the access to capital side, and that's something we continue to work on. And what's interesting about our culture, and we talked about this, what's helped us be successful in East Africa is we have a very similar culture to a lot of the cultures we interact with in East Africa. It's highly relational. It's very humble. It's very, there's not a flash to it. We're just kind of good old boys, and it's kind of that all shucks attitude. Actually, that's worked real well for us in the context of working in new cultures, and that I think that's something we should not shy away from and use that to our advantage.
Just wanted to say, when I set out and stumbled across this a couple of years ago, to be honest with you, I think it was when I got the letter inviting me here that I first heard the phrase social entrepreneur. Let's not forget the social side. I think for us, it literally can span the miles, the ability for a group of people from, as you said, anywhere, literally. I mean, not tied just to geography as things used to be. Grouping together, whether it's in a corporate form or just a group of donors and a group of borrowers, as they did with Kiva. But the social aspect for Arkansas is great because we don't have to all get together in one building. We can simply go out there and keep people up to date on what's going on. Heck, other than I think I found out about the original meeting I went to in Fayetteville 2.5 years ago on the internet. So I think as the social aspect increases, as more and more people have access to the internet and and other forms of social media and communication through smartphones, etc., I think we're only going to have more opportunities.
Well, and that brings up sort of my last question, which we only have time for one more question for the panel. And it's my least fully formed question, I guess, but something I guess we can chew on a little bit. But I just wonder whether this whole concept of social entrepreneurship is sort of the inevitable outcome of sort of what's happened in the, not only the national, but the global economy, because as corporations have gotten bigger and bigger and more global, and you have this concept of too big to fail and big banks and all of that, that somehow the, even though corporations are people now, there's been sort of a loss of connection at the level of Main Street, and the idea that, corporations exist, ultimately to enable people to have, better lives and to, stimulate an economy that then grows. And so I warned you this wasn't, the most fully formed question, but I mean, is this kind of the direction we're heading because, we've reached this point in our economy where things almost are kind of shrinking back to where people, need to know that their patronage is having a social benefit because they can't see it through the other forms of corporations that we have?
I shouldn't take this, but in a lot of ways it's semantics in the sense that I feel like this has been going on for a very long time. We just don't hear about it. Most of the people that I know that do a lot of impactful things don't want anybody else knowing about it. And so I think what you touched on, I think just from a cultural standpoint, we're feeling a disconnect from the bigness of the too big to fail concept and whatever. But I really think it's something that's been going on, and now we've identified and we point out people that are doing it in noticeable ways. Maybe that's technology, I'm not sure. But as I've been involved in something to this effect for the last 7 or 8 years, the one thing that I've, I guess, come to understand is that if you're not careful, it's really no different than any other job. And for me, the biggest impact that I can have is not standing up here, sitting up here with you, but it's next week when I sit down with the farmers and have a 2-hour conversation that should take 5 minutes, but because we can't communicate and there's so many things lost in translation, those are the most impactful 2 hours I'll spend all year. And if we lose sight of what we're really trying to do and really make it about ourselves and feeling good because we think we're doing good, we're no different than anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest struggles too. Austin, I say that a lot, is sometimes you think going into it, oh, this is going to be something that is going to allow us to feel good in essence, similar to what you said, but a lot of times it really is not about us at all. And the more you step back and look at the larger picture, the more humbled I think that you feel. This summer, Austin and I got the chance to go to Swaziland, Africa, and we met a woman that I think I will remember this for the rest of our lives that we do this, but they called her Gogo, and in Siswati that means grandma. And this woman had lost all 12 of her children to AIDS, and she had all of her children's children, and she was caring for them. And as I heard her talking, that's when I remembered, this is why we do what we do, is for people like Gogo. And not necessarily to make ourselves feel better, but just the authenticity. And I think to speak to your question, I think America now is really looking for that authenticity in business, is for people that truly do care, because they did start their business because of a mission. They aren't doing the mission to help their business. And I think there's a big difference in that. At least Austin and I found that, because the difference comes in those 2-hour conversations on Monday morning. When you think, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for this mission. Like, I would have quit a long time ago. And so we try to ever keep that before us, the people like Gogo.
Well, I was just going to say just very briefly, I think one thing that corporations can do, and you see this with a lot of Arkansas-based corporations, it really makes a difference. It is when senior management supports its employees to get out and get involved in all kinds of different local activities, and makes time available to where they can do that as long as they get their jobs done. And then again, you get multiple people
most of the entrepreneurs I know, or especially the best ones, are social entrepreneurs. I mean, personally, as people, they're certainly led by a mission. You know, I think the great ones would take Steve Jobs. I think he wasn't really motivated primarily by making money. He was primarily motivated by changing the world, or a special vision that he had. When I saw Muhammad Yunus speak, and I had that quote on the wall earlier, it said something about, he made a remark about capitalism as that capturing both sides of our personality. So it certainly captures and incentivizes and motivates the side of our personality that wants to amass resources, protect ourselves, protect our family, gain wealth, gain status, and that's a real part of what we do. It's important. But there's this other side, which I think is evolutionarily adapted for them, which is all about collaboration, reaching out, cooperation, which is important in human societies traditionally. If everyone is only greedy, we probably wouldn't dominate as a species as we have, because we need to work together. We're social creatures. The problem that you're noticing is that our legal and corporate structure doesn't mirror our nature as humans. And so we find ourselves trapped within a system that incentivizes only part of our personality. And then I believe as that system grows and becomes the central unit of society as the corporation, it's bound to fail. Because not only does it lead to environmental destruction, it also leaves us feeling sort of at a loss or incomplete at the end of the day. We do things all day that don't satisfy us entirely. So it's bound to happen. The question is how bad will things have to get before it sort of breaks. My guess is there'll have to be many, many more crises before capitalism as we know it gets transformed.
On that note, it's time for the Q&A. So I guess we'll follow the same model as before. We've got microphones, I think, around the room, and encourage anybody who has a question for a panelist or the whole panel to stand up and make yourself known. And I see one right there. We have a microphone for him.
Hi, my name is Brett Cameron. I'm class 9 at the Clinton School. And I think many of us in here are probably wearing the social entrepreneur hat right now. But I'd kind of like to take that off and ask, as just a community member, aside from like buying food from Pizza for Two or investing in Kiva, how can we as members of the community support the social entrepreneurship movement within our communities?
One thing I would suggest and is to build a practical skill set that could be used to build a company that makes a difference in the world. And I've just seen from my experience, seen a lot of people they're very eager to want to get out of school and come be a part of our coffee business and live in Africa and get to experience that, but they have no market skills. They don't know anything besides they have passion. And I've encouraged people just coming out of school and just getting in the workforce it wouldn't be bad to spend some time getting some marketable skills, finance, marketing, any time I'm a business guy, so I think like that, so I apologize. But I think that's one key thing that many young people can do. And then in the community setting, I think just working, finding a group of people that you can just sit around and brainstorm with, which is something that I really never had, but I wish I would have when I was in my 20s, was just find a group of like-minded people that let's try to solve the world's problems and dream big.
There are a lot of volunteer opportunities too. Maybe that's what you're referring to, but there's a growing number of fellowship programs for people to take a year off. So one of them, my friend Abby started this organization called Global Citizen Year, that allows people to spend a year abroad in the field doing work in a number of countries. My friend Barbara Bush of the Bushes started an organization called Global Health Corps, which allows health professionals to volunteer abroad as well. Kiva has a Kiva Fellowship program that sends any of you, people of any age, to go work for 3 months or more all over the world, almost, in about 60 countries, even in Little Rock, we have one here. Pretty much whatever skill you have, there's probably some way now to use that skill towards some social good. Even if you speak another language, at Kiva we have Kiva translators, so we have 1,000 translators. And the whole site's in English. That's because it's written in Spanish, or it's written in French, or Swahili, and someone like you logs in from Little Rock and translates it, for 10 minutes a day. So it's really fun. There's so many different ways now on the internet to just donate partial time to do something good.
Yeah, I know for us, not just eating in the restaurant, that always does help, but also we host an event. Female Serving Children, the nonprofit that we partner with, actually puts the event on. But it's here in Central Arkansas, and really what Austin I found is getting people just to volunteer their time is a huge need of ours. But what the Mobile Pack event is it's when we hand pack the meals that we actually donate. So they're scientifically formulated meals which are designed to take a child from extreme malnutrition to a healthy functioning child. So if you're looking for a way right here in Little Rock even to get involved, the event's April 3rd through 5th, and we're looking for people to help. So you can always follow us or anything to find out when the event will be, but it's just a 2-hour packing shift. And it's a lot of fun, and it doesn't matter if you're 5 or 95. It's something that everybody can do, and it helps someone change their life. So.
Buy local food.
I see some hands kind of all over the place, so I guess we'll let the microphones go in those directions.
Hi, I'm Laura Bauer, and I'm getting my master's in social work at UALR. How are y'all evaluating your efforts and the impact you're having?
How do we evaluate the impacts that we're having as organizations? I'll start with me real quick. Kiva measures breadth measures and depth measures. So we believe impact equals breadth times depth. And in terms of breadth, it's numbers like loan volume. So the amount of loans dispersed in a year, and for us it's 130 million right now, and 1 million borrowers total. In terms of depth, we have this one measure that we use at the highest level called the percent of our loans which we believe are highly catalytic, meaning they're reaching people that are really left out, and we're truly causing a loan to happen that would have otherwise be caused. And right now we think that's at about 30% of all of our loans are truly reaching people that definitely wouldn't have gotten loans without Kiva. So we're trying to get that up to 100% over time, but it's a long-term effort.
I know for us this goes back to the point that we made by really working with organizations that you trust and that you've researched. That's one thing also I've learned is just how much we can't do through this process. And we've really learned to work with groups that do things really well. So we can make a good cheese pizza, but it's very difficult for us to be connected to the children in Swazi that live in the village of Moneni, because we don't live there and we don't understand the need that is happening there. So for us, the way that we measure and evaluate how it's working, of course we measure by meals raised in the restaurant. So every time you purchase a pizza, salad, or wrap, we keep track of that. But also, Female Serving Children, we've developed a relationship with them. They work with NGOs on the ground. So over 70 different organizations on the ground receive their food. So this past year, we had a really unique opportunity to request that our food goes to a specific organization on the ground. So we asked that it went to Children's Cup, just because we love who they are and what they believe in. They believe in treating a child holistically. So you're not necessarily handing out, but you're handing up is what we call it. So whenever they're helping these children, they're going at it by not just providing them the meals, but the meals are the foundation for changing those kids' lives. So that's really how we measure success, is not just by handing a child a bowl of nutrient-dense rice, but you're handing a child a bowl of hope that can change their life, because they're also receiving medical care, they're being involved in preschool, their moms are actually learning to make headbands, which is really cool. I'm actually going to hook them up with Kiva, but they went down to Nicaragua this past summer. They actually work in the restaurant. We gave them the summer off, and they worked with a feeding center down there called Bethel Feeding Center.
And what Austin and I loved is this had nothing to do with us. These are just college students. One of them is an occupational therapy school, and the other one, she's still figuring out what she wants her major to be. But down there, they went to feed the children, and they actually invested in the moms. And they took just cloth from the dump and basically bleached the cloth, and then through that, they have colored it, and the women are weaving headbands, and now we're selling them in the restaurant, all because of what 2 employees came up with. So just really neat to see that that is a huge measure of success for us. Not necessarily just feeding kids, but motivating college students to start their own business that makes an impact. So really cool.
For us in Rwanda, we basically spent the first 3 or 4 years just really trying to figure out how to buy and sell coffee, just the basic math of doing business. But in the last 18 months, we've hired a sustainability staff to go out, and we work with about 70,000 farmers, and to put in place just to give us a baseline of measurement of social, economic, financial situations that our farmer groups are in. And then we partner with groups that actually know what they're doing, because I mean, we're literally bean counters, we're finance guys, we're operations guys, and we went into one area with a washing station that we work with and found that they had a significant protein deficiency in that area, so we partnered with Heifer, and they're putting 100 cattle in place with some of our farmer groups. And so finding people that know what they're doing and do it better than you do, I think that's the best way to go about truly measuring your success, because we've seen a lot of people measure it internally, and you can really come up with some great numbers when you do it yourself.
I was just going to say, and I am a big believer in accountability and, trying doing your best to measure your success. But there's some things you just can't predict, and some things you just can't measure. And on our Presidential Scholars Program, we can track how many students are going through, graduation rates, retention rates, how many dollars we're spending, and all that sort of thing. But the reality is, it may be one out of that 150 kids that someday becomes the next president of Rwanda that really makes a huge difference to the country. And those types of beliefs and commitments, and you'll not know whether you're successful and whether you're getting a good return on your investment for many years to come.
Okay, other questions? Up front, maybe? Or...
Hi, my name's Hannah Minchow Prophet. I'm a Class 9 student at the Clinton School, like my fellow friends over here. Is that? Okay, I'm going to go over here. Matt, what you said just now about capitalism was really interesting to me, and I'd love if you could elaborate on that a little bit. And so I'd like to open it up to the rest of the panel as well, just your ideas on capitalism, and not just business, not just corporations, but capitalism as an idea, and how, like, whether you see your work as working within capitalism to change it versus maintain it, and just your ideas about that.
I don't really know how to answer that, because I'm not, first of all, I've never taken an economics class. I've never taken a business class. I'm a philosophy major and master's student. So I can only speak in terms of philosophies, but I can't validate in my philosophies with empirical data, which maybe you can. But I am motivated by trying to create a community of people that is a beautiful thing. I think lending to make money off of money can be a very corrupting thing. So I am a bit anti-capitalist, to be honest. And I'm trying to find some middle ground, at least. I think capitalism needs to be sort of restrained. So it's not a strong anti-capitalist, it's not a socialism, but it's a restraint on capitalism, because I believe if the world is based on a number of corporations that all have no nuance and are only just trying to maximize profit without any judgment to restrain that, that basically ruins the environment and ruins our lives over time. And so I think, as unfettered capitalism left to its own devices, unrestrained, will just lead to environmental destruction if we just let it play out, because every company needs to grow every year all the time. Well, there's a finite number of resources, so that's just logically impossible from a philosophical standpoint and will lead to some sort of endpoint. Its own destruction will crush itself somehow. That's as far as I can go with my Karl Marx rant today.
I'm a believer in capitalism for more than a century, probably about two. I believe the English joint stock companies were the first ones that began with the idea we could all pour our money together and accomplish something we couldn't by ourselves, and then we could each reap some benefit from that when time came to divide up dividends. Unfocused, wandering capitalism can be a dangerous thing, because the nature of capitalism, and particularly in where my focus is in the corporate structure, is an incredibly powerful machine. It works. It can harness capital from around this globe and bring it to bear. Now, it can harness that for no good reason, or we can nudge it toward a focused view of, let's concentrate that money, let's all get rich, and yes, let's make our world a better place in the same time. So I think capitalism has a future if it is more focused, and we have to continue to nudge it toward its better side.
We should have a whole day talking about this, because it's, I think, more about who we are as people than what we are as a way we interact with one another financially and socially and corporately. But capital money is like water. It's going to flow to the places that it's the least risk, and it's the easiest way to make money. That's the way, and that's, and I think, inherent maybe in our nature, risk reward. And when we personalize capitalism, it can sometimes seem unfair, and it can seem that it's there are being people left out. And I think that it's the capitalism that definitely gets, rightfully so, maybe thrown up on a wall and say, these are the bad guys, here's who we're after. That's maybe a reflection of the nature, not the system, because I think capitalism, and I think Bono even said this recently, who is definitely, I would not call him a conservative right-winger, but he said capitalism's brought more people out of poverty than any charity ever has. And I agree with that personally, just because I've seen it, but I'm just a little guy doing a little job, and I can't pretend to have all the answers, but I think if we can be better people, our practice of capitalism will be better. I think it's a people problem, not an infrastructure or how we do business problem.
Ditto.
Well, having worked at the SEC for a while, I've seen some fairly ugly sides of capitalism.
At the football conference,
yes.
right?
No, not the football conference. And I really, to echo what Todd is saying, and I think what you're seeing now in the more contemporary MBA programs is a much stronger emphasis on ethics and responsibility, and it's the people that are involved and how they work within their businesses that really make the difference. And having a company that makes money but is polluting rivers or causing any kind of environmental issues or stealing people's money or something, that's obviously unacceptable. So the goal is to get the people within the corporations and businesses to act in a socially responsible manner and try and do some good things, and there's nothing inconsistent with that about making an honest living.
Ashton, you can have the last word, because I think we're down to our last couple minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Todd made a great point. I think it really is not necessarily about capitalism or not capitalism, more about the matter of the heart, I think, and who your focus is. If your focus is about yourself, then I think that's when you create some of the corrupt issues. But if your focus is on, that's why we're all here with social entrepreneurship, if your focus is on creating positive change in the world, if you have a double bottom line in your company, as we do with a for-profit company, they work together. So if we're able to make money, then we're able to give more. So with that, I think it just depends on where your heart is, and it goes back to what your priorities are. So that's where I agree. I think it just goes back to ethics.
Well, terrific. Well, I want to thank our panelists once again, and the Winthrop Rockefeller Institute and the Clinton School of Public Service, and Dean Rutherford. I understand that I'm supposed to turn this over to you now.